Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 6 of our 8 days of awe. We are going live uh, every day between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. This season, they're called the 10 days of awe. So I'm not doing one on Rosh Hashanah and I'm not doing one on Yom Kippur, but every day in between. And every day is a different topic. And today, as you may have guessed from my sign, we are talking about gratitude and awe. But I wanted to specifically call out this idea that one of the things we're taught to is to be grateful for the good and the bad. The midot, or the soul trait of gratitude, in Hebrew it's called hakarot hatov, which is recognize the good and give thanks. But you know what? We're kind of living in sucky times right now. And how do we learn to be grateful when things are not so good? So that is what we are going to talk about today. And I don't know about you, but I am particularly annoyed by this whole controversy around the NFL. When I'm shooting this video right now, today, live, the president called out Colin Kaepernick, and then the NFL responded, and then a bunch of people got really mad. And boy, I am just really, as much as I've tried to kind of let this one go, it has really stuck in my craw because some friends of mine, some people I know from college, they're very conservative politically, but no matter what I do, they are not willing to talk about the underlying issue which has people upset. Sorry, I've kind of sidetracked, but this is kind of on my mind. It's like, geez, we're in a country where people are giving up their football tickets because they're mad that people are kneeling down. And at the same time, they're not upset that people are getting killed by the police and that there's, Nazis marching and other stuff. Come on. What is going on? How am I supposed to feel gratitude right now? I mean, this is what is keeping me up at night. And I'm like, geez, what is going on here? I've talked about in some of these broadcasts earlier, hey, hello, welcome. I've talked to, about, a lot of things that have been going on, with me right now, that I am having a hard time keeping work thoughts from popping into my head. I am just sort of this, as much as I try to kind of focus and look around and be grateful, I'm just getting obsessed with, Facebook posts and emails and this and that. And how can I take things to a higher level? So let's see how gratitude can fit in, even though, as I said before, the times are kind of sucky. So how do we feel grateful in sucky times? Well, let's look at what some of the Mussar masters have to say. Okay, so in Duties of the Heart, which was written 1,000 years ago in Spain by Rabbi Bahya ibn Pakuda, he talks about 3 things that keep us from being grateful. So the first is we become too occupied with the material. So if we think about our own life where we're bombarded with marketing and advertising all the time, trying to tell us all the things that we don't have. If I start wishing that I had the iPhone X, I fail to appreciate how good my iPhone 6 is. Okay? There are people who don't have mobile phones at all, and they don't have smartphones. And in today's day and age, I think about how helpful this thing is. I hardly drive anywhere without using my Waze app, for example. It saves me time in traffic. But if all I'm worried about is, I don't have the facial recognition thing, or I don't have this and that, I forget how much good comes into my life from what I already have. And if that's true for something as trivial as a phone, how much more true is that for other things, like having food to eat, having a safe place to stay? I was just reading in the paper that 1 in 6 high school students don't have a regular place to sleep, and they're couch surfing, or they know someone who's in that, and they're worried about, where am I going to stay? geez, I live in my own home. That's the farthest thing from my mind. But do I recognize that? Am I grateful for that? Not really. I just take it for granted. Okay, which takes us to the second thing, which is taking things for granted. Um, just exactly the example I was just talking about. I kind of transitioned from this um, too focused on the material to taking things for granted. And there's so much good in my life. Health, I have good health care, I have good health insurance. My health is good, my family's health is good, lots of things. And if we just, take all of that for granted, then we're not being grateful for what we have. And the third is focusing on the negative. And this is kind of where I started in the broadcast. I'm all upset about this. I'm upset because other people are upset because people are protesting and kneeling down in football games. I mean, this is what I'm worried about. Um, you know, every piece of bad news, and geez, there is a lot of bad news in the world today. As I said, these are kind of sucky times. Never in my life, I'm going to be 51 in a couple months. Never in my life have I experienced anything like this. The amount of turmoil in the country, the amount of vitriol and anger that's out there. And, I was talking with my coach and friend Paul Zelizer, who has this wonderful group of wearpreneurs, and he's like, Greg, we're Jews. We know where this leads when we have a leadership in the country the way we do today. I mean, this is one of those times where maybe when we were kids, we'd say, well, what would you have done in the lead up to, if you were in Germany in the lead up to Hitler? Or what would you have done in the 60s? What would you have done when there's these calamities going on? Well, we are going down that road. This is not a fun time to be Jewish in America. This is not a fun time to be a minority. This is not a fun time to be someone who believes in inclusion, because we are getting messages from our government that this is not okay. These are not fun times to live in. So the paradox is that maybe gratitude is what can help get us through. And so how is it that we practice gratitude? Well, in Mussar, we're taught to be grateful for 3 categories of things, okay? We want to be grateful for good things in our life. And these are some of the things that I was just talking about, that things that maybe we take for granted or we're distracted from noticing because of the material in the world. So we want to be grateful for those good things and to remember to them. And secondly, and this is how a Mussar gratitude practice is different from some of the more popular gratitude practices, we also want to be grateful for the bad things in our life. What? I'm supposed to be grateful for the bad? I'm supposed to be grateful for a president who doesn't have anything bad to say about white supremacists, and I want to be grateful for this knee that I have, which prevents me from hiking and seeing waterfalls in Yosemite, and I'm supposed to be grateful for that. I'm supposed to be grateful for the death of I got an email this morning that a student at my daughter's high school died. I don't know who it is. I'm worried about that. I'm concerned. Is it somebody I know? Am I supposed to be grateful for that? Well, the short answer is yes. And this can be challenging. So let's think about this from some easier examples. Okay, let's not go to the death of a high school student. Let's not start with, maybe a president that we don't like. Let's start with something, for me, I was laid off from a job. Many people are laid off from work, and that can be really heart-wrenching. And if you are really in love with your company or like the people you work with, that can seem like a terrible setback. But so many people in the fullness of time will look back and say, you know what? that layoff was the best thing that ever happened to me. At the time, it felt like a catastrophe. It felt like, I was really worried and scared. But suddenly it opened up doors for me, and it made me realize, you know what? As much as I liked that job, there were parts of it that I hated. Or geez, I was really upset. I hated the job, and but I was afraid I'd lose it, and then I lost it. But all of a sudden, I got a better job. Or you know what? It gave me a chance to change careers. Or it made me realize how stressed out I was, and spending a couple of months looking for a job let me start going to the gym again. I spent more time with my family. I was able to reconnect with some old friends. And suddenly this really bad thing that happened opened the doors to something good. So yes, that's kind of the spirit of finding the good in the bad. It's like the old thing about the silver lining. And so that's how powerful a gratitude practice can be. And so the third thing that we want to be grateful for is we want to be grateful for inanimate things. Okay, so there's a story about the Kotzer Rebbe who, when he was done with his shoes, he would wrap them in newspaper before throwing them away. And so they asked him, like, Rebbe, why are you doing this? They're just a pair of shoes. And he said, no, they're not just a pair of shoes. These are shoes that I've worn for a long time. They looked nice, they were comfortable, they supported my feet, and so I want to thank them. I'm wrapping them up. I'm thanking them for their service. Or before he sat down in shul, he used to get out a piece of like a cloth, and he'd wipe off the seat, just to not to make it clean, but just kind of out of respect. It's like, hey, this chair is going to support me. Now, if any of you have bad backs like I do, how much difference does it make to have a chair that's comfortable, to have a chair that supports you? And last year for Hanukkah, what I asked for one of those little stools, or one of those little seats with a back, so that when I go to see my kids perform at the halftime of the football game, I don't have to get a sore back sitting on the bleachers. So again, we could just take these things for granted, or we can be appreciative of the inanimate things in our life. There are Judaism, for those people who follow the traditional practices, they say you should pray and give thanks 100 times a day. And so many of the prayers are, thanks for the bread, thanks for the wine, thanks for being able to go to the bathroom. When I first learned about that, I was younger, and I kind of snickered a little bit. And then for my 50th birthday, in addition to my sore knee, I also got an enlarged prostate. And suddenly, going to the bathroom is not so fun anymore. I mean, not that it was ever fun, but it just takes a long time. Okay? I mean, I think on the biological scale, women probably have more things they need to deal with biologically than men do. I think they have a rougher deal. They have to deal with pregnancy and all kinds of other stuff. But men, we have our things as well. And as we get older, the prostate gets bigger, and it's just the pee stream slows down. And I never appreciated just taking a good leak the way that I do now, where it's just not as easy as it used to be. So yeah, we should appreciate and give thanks. And there's still lots of biological functions that work just fine. But the reality is that as we get older, the body just doesn't work as well. So let's give thanks and let's appreciate all those years. I also, a couple years ago, got reflux. I had to change my diet. I can't eat gluten and dairy anymore. I miss pizza. But you know what? I had thousands of pieces of pizza in my life. And I really got a huge amount of enjoyment out of those. And so I can sit and be upset and wish that I could still eat pizza, or I could be grateful that there's so many gluten-free foods that are out there, and be grateful for all of the fantastic pizza. I'm from New York. I'm from New York State. We love our pizza. Not down with the deep dish pizza. Sorry, Chicago folks. I know you love it. great, have at it. But for me, um, yeah. Okay, we have a note here from Perez. I never appreciated the prayer until a serious illness also made things difficult. Yeah, yeah, it does. It does open our eyes that, you know what? Let's appreciate what we have and let's appreciate everything that we can do. There's another story, another form of gratitude is comes from Rabbi Israel Salanter, who is an absolute giant in Mussar history. He started the whole Mussar movement in Lithuania. And so there's a story that he went into a coffee shop and he said, you know, why am I paying so much for a cup of coffee? I mean, if he was worried about that in the 19th century, just imagine what he'd say if he see that people are paying $4 for a cup of coffee at Phil's or $3 or $4 at Starbucks. So this was just a simple coffee shop, and he said, he said to the shop owner, why am I paying so much for some beans and some hot water? And the guy said, well, you're not just paying for that. You're paying for the nice seat. You're paying for all of the work that went into preparing the coffee, for having this nice place to drink it, for the person who grew the coffee and the person who harvested the beans and the person who carried the beans to the market and the person who got the beans from the market, shipped them overseas to where we are. And it changed Rabbi Salanter's whole view of the situation. He's like, yeah, there is a lot to be grateful for here. So we can also appreciate all of the people who do the work to make things possible. You know, there's a story about the Dalai Lama, who in the days of the Soviet Union, he was visiting the Kremlin and he was going to meet, I don't know who it was some important person. And as he walked in, he rushed up and he shook the hand of the person who was at the door. And the guy said, you know, there's hundreds, thousands of people who have stood here. You are the first person who's ever taken the time to recognize me. And so we can be grateful. I mean, that's also practicing the soul trait of kavod, of honor. It's honoring every person. But we can just be grateful for the people who do all of these things. And, you know, when we took a vacation this summer to LA and we stayed at a hotel and we would ride the shuttle bus over Universal Studios, I always thank the person and I often gave him a tip. But whenever I'm on a shuttle bus, I really thank the people for doing their jobs. I try to thank the people who are doing the checkout work in the grocery store. Just being grateful for the contributions that people have. Okay, so the last thing I want to share with you is, you know, as I said before, we're kind of in, you know, this is a difficult time. You know, so how can we remember to be grateful? Well, I want to tell you about the 15-minute gratitude challenge. I put a link to this blog post. It's something that I did. I started it in January 2016, and I said, hey, what if we do it for 5778 too? We have a new year. So here's how we can get gratitude in our life. So what you do is you take a piece of paper, and at the top, first write down the 3 things that make it difficult to be grateful. And so to review again, it's too occupied by the material, it is taking things for granted, and it is focusing on the negative. So those are our 3 barriers to gratitude recognized by Rabbi Bahe Ibn Pekuda. And then we want to write down the 3 categories of things to be grateful for. Grateful for good things, grateful for bad things, and grateful for inanimate things. And then on your smartphone or just using some other methods, set a timer for 15 minutes. And what you want to do is write down everything in your life that you're grateful for. So I did this earlier today. And so here are my barriers. Oops, sorry, you can't see this. So I know this is backward. Here are the barriers. Here are the good things. And then I started writing. And so we had 1 page. We had 2 pages. We had almost 3 pages of things that I am grateful for in my life. And so I started with people, huge numbers of people in my life that I'm grateful for. Grateful for my family. Grateful for friends, etc. And what was amazing is I went along, I suddenly was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I forgot so-and-so. I'm not going to say who they are because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But there's some people who are huge in my life. They're huge. And I forgot to write down to be grateful for them. And so then I got into my favorite chair, my favorite blanket, my cats. I mean, just that feeling of having a cat sit in your lap and purr and sleep. I mean, I have a really good friend. She has this cat, is afraid of everybody. This was kind of a rescued cat and was very skittish around people. So just having a cat that can be warm and loving, that's not something that most people have. Cat haters out there, you know, just give me this one. I must say I'm not so into dogs, but a lot of people are. Being grateful for our pets, being kind to our pets, that's another traditional Mussar practice for love and kindness, is being kind to animals. So what else came up? There was somebody I hired earlier. For years I've been trying to get my website fixed. I found somebody who could speed it up, paid him some money, but it was wonderful. I'm really grateful for that help that I got. The people at the coffee shop, but then there were also some of the bad things. Like, I am not at all a fan of our president. I know some of you may be. You probably weren't fans of a president that I liked. So how can I be grateful for this? Well, that one was tough, but it is it's making people more politically aware, and they're more appreciative of that their votes count. Okay, we're at a country where you can disagree with the president and you won't be sent to jail. Like, you disagree with the president of Turkey, supposedly a democracy, is a democracy, you're going to jail for that. Okay, can't take for granted that we live in a country where you can do those things. And it was also interesting, like, one thing I wrote down is when I've been doing this for about 5 minutes, I felt this huge sense of dread. I was trying to, my evil inclination, that my id, that darker part of me, didn't want me to keep going with this. And I pushed through. So that's an indication. It's like, hey, I'm actually getting somewhere. When you feel that resistance, that's telling you that you're on the right track. One of my friends, Rabbi Jennifer Clayman, led us in a chanting exercise a couple weeks ago, and she's like, when you're doing the chant and you're starting to feel like, okay, I've chanted enough, that's telling you, okay, your soul is engaged, you're on the right track. That means you have some more work to do. So I guess where I would leave you is I would really invite you to join me in this gratitude challenge, because I do feel lighter. I do feel like this is it isn't cured everything in my life, but it's changed the way I view my life, and it's giving me some marching orders that maybe that's what I need to focus on. I thought maybe I needed to focus on being better organized, and if I set better priorities and did a little bit less, I won't have these work thoughts popping in my head. But maybe what I need to focus on is gratitude. Maybe that can remind me of what I need to put my energy into. If I can remember to be grateful for things and to appreciate the things that I have, maybe that's the secret to move forward to. So I invite you right now or later today to join me in the gratitude challenge. Get out a piece of paper, set a timer, write down the 3 barriers to gratitude, write down the 3 categories of things to be grateful for. And then come back to the webpage, or come back to the post that's going to go with this, and tell us how it went. I'd love to know. Okay. So I am so grateful for your time today, either watching live or watching the replay. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow.